welcome back to an Ode to Birth podcast. Today we have an incredible guest with us, Miss Billie Harrigan. Mother Billie, welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, and I'm sure many of the listeners who are tuning into this podcast are familiar with you, Mother Billie, and the work that you do. But I shall give a little bit of an intro and then I'll hand it over to you because I feel like as ourselves, we can probably give the best introduction for ourselves. But yeah, Billie Harrigan, she's been here teaching midwives, educating families for many, many, many moons. She's taught midwives in 123 countries. And so really reminding us and the skills of physiological birth and trauma-informed care. And she's so well-versed in the policy and the politics of midwifery around the world. So when I first was introduced to Billie's work, I was under the pressure, feeling the pressure of the BC College of Nurse and Midwives here in British Columbia because of the work that I do in supporting families in physiological birth. And Billie's work reminded me that I'm not doing anything wrong, even though the college is going to try and make it seem like I'm doing something wrong. Because Billie's really, it seems like you're here to steward us in this work and remind us that this is such an important part of society in birthing our children in a physiological manner, reducing trauma, reducing pain in the birth space, reducing pain for our children. So I want to hand it over to you, Billie. Like, why are you here? What's your purpose? And what's really lighting you up in this work as a traditional birth companion?
I guess I'm just here to be a more useful human. To do things that need to be done when they need to do it, to answer the call when it needs to be answered, and to show up when others don't or won't. So I'm just here to help and to serve and hopefully make things better for more families. My ultimate goal is to see more babies arrive safely and gently from healthy, non-traumatized, empowered mothers. Because the way the industry approaches this is to disempower the mother because they're taking agency over her body and her process and her physiology under the assumption that she is a significant danger to her baby. And it is their services that will ensure that there's a living baby at the end of the process. Whether or not she is emotionally destroyed, it's irrelevant. It's not their problem. So how about we stop emotionally destroying mothers when they're having their babies? Keep that mother-baby bond intact, foster it, optimize her wellness, her physical, emotional, spiritual wellness that filters out into families and into society. And we can have healthier societies by simply not destroying the mother.
Yeah, let's stop getting in the way. I've noticed through...
It's not just that they're getting in the way. It's that what is being done is intentionally hurting these mothers and these babies and these families.
So you believe that what's happening in the maternity wards is all through intention? They're designed to...
That is its root. So if we look at the root of this goes back to the witch burnings, where we got rid of the midwives and we got rid of the wise women, we got rid of the healers, not we, but collectively society, got rid of the healers, the god siblings who were the neighbors, the aunties, the grandmothers who went to birth to support the mother alongside the midwife, got rid of them too, because we understood at the time that if you leave women alone, unsupervised by men, well, they were just prone to sorcery. And the likelihood was they were going to be conjuring and there would be sorcery. There had been too many burnings. We'd lost too many women, so it didn't become safe. The male midwife entered into the birth scene primarily because women were not trustworthy enough to hold sharp instruments. So men were allowed to have sharp instruments, meaning they were allowed to cut hair. They were barbers. But it also meant they were surgeons. So it was the barber surgeons who were called when a fetus had died and it needed to be extricated. Anytime there were sharp instruments or surgery was needed, the barber surgeon was called. They came to the most complex of births, where either the mother or the baby had already passed away. And their efforts to extract a fetus usually killed the mother anyway. But and then, thanks to the Chamberlain family, they created forceps, which was a very useful instrument, but it was kept hidden for 100 years. And as men were allowed to use this tool, they became, the experts of complexity. Midwives were the experts of absolutely everything, but this new tool was very useful, but it was kept hidden and only in the hands of men. Now we have no midwives. We have very few women left. The neighbors aren't willing to go. And in moves the male midwife into a fairly profitable realm. But as it turns out, it's far more profitable to put them in institutions and have the women come to them than to be dispatched into their homes. None of this came about because of benevolence. None of this came about because their truest heart and interest was to ensure women survived and babies survived and families thrived. It was a power grab. That's the root. What we see are the fruit. We're looking at the fruit of the root. The root didn't change. The root has not been dug up. There has been elements of benevolence added to it, but the root itself was to co-opt and control women's physiology for power and profit. And along the way, some benevolent elements have been added to it, but the root is still the same, to control and co-opt women's physiology for power and profit. And the fruit that we see right now is disempowered mothers, women terrified of giving birth, brutalized, traumatized, coerced. Still, the midwives they better be good girls and be team players. They were allowed back under the auspices of obstetrics and the practice of midwifery in most places in the world, not all. In most places, it's pretty indistinguishable from obstetrics. So it's kind of like obstetrics light. But it is the practice of obstetrics on low-risk women, and it is the obstetrics industry that decided what low risk is. And so they're allowed to do obstetrics on that group of people that really don't need anybody. They just should call the neighbor. And as it came back, well, now what we're seeing is the fruit of this root. And that is, depending on where you are in the world, between, a 30 or an 80% cesarean rate. Prior to the global response to a leaked virus, prior to that, about 1/3 of women had a traumatic birth. And traumatic is not awful. Traumatic means there is the specific features that defines it as traumatic: violation, loss of autonomy, fear for life, and helplessness. And now we've also got research saying that some women come out of this experience saying they were tortured. And indeed, their experience, their narrative does line up with what we know about torture. We've got minimum 1/3 of women struggling with postpartum depression and or anxiety afterwards. Here in Canada, prior to the national response, 1 in 10 women struggle with thoughts of self-harm in that first year postpartum. What is being done to these women that they are shells of human beings afterwards, destroyed, struggling, just to welcome their baby? But, it was safe and effective. Safe and effective. That's where you need to be. Well, their outcomes are terrible, and their outcomes are merely the fruit of that original root.
Women that are dissociated from their bodies, feeling disempowered, mothers that are not feeling safe in mothering. They feel broken. They can't nurture their baby. They can't nurture themselves. It's not a very lovely way to start life. And I think that's why we are where we are within humanity. And we are in this dense vibration, this lower vibration, because the initial imprint of our birthing experience has been totally sabotaged. There's a lot of obstetric violence, a lot of rape that I've seen in my career, predominantly when I was working with families that were birthing in the hospitals, the beginning of my career. And immediately I knew something was wrong. And now, 10 years later, after witnessing incredible physiological birth and seeing how optimal it is for the mother and baby, this is the answer. And like, there's no turning back at this point now. And for the powers that be to tell us that what we're doing is wrong is absolutely ludicrous, because I'm seeing mothers lying in bed, feeling happy and elated and high and so empowered and ecstatic, and they can't stop smiling and crying in joy because they birthed their baby in power. That's the answer right there. So how is it that what we're doing, Billie, in supporting women in this way, in a neighborly way, like you say, a neighborly fashion, how's what we're doing wrong?
It's challenging the power structure. They have a monopoly. How dare you challenge the power structure? Essentially, we're not. I mean, we're not challenging them. You do you, boo. Carry on. I have no interest in changing one thing about this rotten fruit that comes from this rotten root. Nothing. And in fact, the industry is needed. It is on the cusp of collapse. It's just the law of diminishing returns. It is on the cusp of collapse. They can't see it. That's fine. And the closer they get to collapse, the more they're grasping at straws and reaching out in punitive ways because they're collapsing and looking around, well, must be somebody else. No, well, you carry on. It should not collapse. It is needed. There are times when women and babies need medical help. And there has to be a medical facility that offers medical care in a medical situation. But if we could get them to do it without abusing their customer, that would be an act of God. For their customer to show up and say, I'm here to buy your service, and to not get berated, belittled, or be the victim of a terror tactic, which is calling social services on them. That would be stellar. That's about the only thing I want to change about the industry. Other than that, we'll just do it ourselves. And this is not that. We are not doing what they do. To say that those of us who show up like the neighbor are practicing midwifery without a license is like saying, I'm a practicing dentist because I know how to brush my teeth. Like, don't be ridiculous. Just stop it. Just stop it. It's so damned immature and infuriating. Nobody is practicing midwifery. You are the practice of obstetrics on low-risk women. We don't do that. We don't do any of your nonsense. We don't engage in that. We don't do it. And in fact, you don't do what we do. You don't know how to do it. The industry does not know how to do what we do, which is fine because the two paths are not crossing. I mean, it'd be great if there was collaboration, but that's never going to happen on their part. I mean, we're willing, they're not. It's not going to happen. So just stay in your lane. Stay in your lane, do your thing, and we're going to do ours, which has nothing to do with you. Mm-hmm. So is it illegal? No more illegal than me brushing my teeth without being a practicing dentist. No.
And any woman should be able to show up to her friend's home or her neighbor's home and bring her some tea and bring her some soup and hold her hand and look her in the eyes and tell her that she's doing a good job. She's going to get this baby out. And it's very obvious when there's imminent danger to the baby and the mother, in my opinion. It's very obvious if we have a cord coming down before a baby. It's very obvious if there's a footling breech situation, you know.
Well, be a more useful human and help the baby.
Yeah.
Even then, I go much farther than that. And I say, every one of us should have useful birth skills. Be a more useful human being. Just to carry on from Gone with the Wind. I don't know nothing about birthing no baby. Don't be ridiculous. Everybody should have basic knowledge and skills. If your child fell down and scraped open their knee, as they will, you're going to have basic parenting skills. You're going to know how to get the gravel out of it. You're going to know how to clean it up. You're going to know how to put a little disinfectant on it, and you're going to know how to bandage it. In the same way, every single person should know how to help a baby get started breathing. This is not secret knowledge. They're asking, society at large really encourages all of us to have the skills of CPR because you just never know. Be a more useful human being. In the same way, know how to get a baby started. What's the difference? It's a good parenting skill. It's a necessary one. And it's a necessary skill, I think, for society at large. Here in Canada, you cannot learn neonatal resuscitation, which is fine with me. I call it the Spanish Inquisition, unless you are a licensed practitioner and you go into one of their sanctioned areas and you learn what they know, the secret knowledge that must be practiced behind the locked doors of L&D with all of their, magical machines, etc. It's like, oh, for crying out loud, just get a baby started. It's not that hard. Everybody should know how to do it. And I also say everybody, the kid who makes your sandwich at Subway should know how to help a breech baby get born. Why is this secret knowledge? Well, it isn't. I mean, they don't know how to do it. We do. I mean, they're useless. And if we're helping a baby whose breech come out and they're going, oh, you're practicing me for a license. Well, you don't do it. What the hell? You don't
Who's
do it.
Who's going to do it?
Right. So just stop it. Go away. Go stay in your lane. Go do whatever it is you do. Go induce somebody. Go do another.
I find it funny how they can perform brain surgery, Billie, but they can't support a physiological breech birth.
Watch a YouTube video. Really. Just watch a YouTube video. So the kid at Subway, the customer comes in, she's very pregnant, she goes into the bathroom, her water breaks, what do you know, precipitous, the little foot comes down. The kid should be able to jump over the counter and say, that's okay, ma'am, I can help. Why not? He's a more useful human. Instead, we've got this ridiculous situation that the industry has created. Oh, we don't do breech because your baby's going to die, head entrapment, and going to die. We'll do surgery. And the mother says, excuse me, no. So she stays at home, and there isn't a single damn useful human who can help. She stays home, the baby does need help, and there's no help. And the people in the industry go, told you there'd be a dead baby. That's your fault. No, it isn't. It's the industry's fault. They created this untenable, shocking, and disgusting situation. Crime against humanity.
So what's happening there when a baby dies in utero during the birthing process, say in a breech, or not even in a breech? We will never know.
The industry says that if the mother was in their services, the baby absolutely would never have died. That would be nice, wouldn't it? It would be nice that every woman who went to a hospital, 100% of the time, left with a living, healthy baby in her arms. But it doesn't happen that way. Some babies don't. It's not
nature. I was just speaking with Kemi, and she's saying, she's reminding us, and this is in a previous episode, that we're not perfect. Nature is not perfect. And obviously it's devastating. Grief is very hard. That's a whole nother conversation. We don't necessarily understand or honor death very well in our society, and in our culture, but it happens, and we could honor it in a different way. But it's something that women need to accept the moment they realize they're pregnant. It's a huge, huge moment, and they have to accept that their baby may not make it up until those final moments.
Life is terminal. No one gets out of here alive. I'm an orphan. I'm an orphaned mother, and I'm a widow. Death happens, and there is no escaping it. And it would be just the most amazing utopia if every single pregnancy resulted in a living baby, if every baby made it to its birth, if every baby made it to childhood, if every child made it to adulthood, if every adulthood made it to old age. That would be spectacular. But we live on this planet, and this is the real world. And can every single instance be prevented? No. We're going to do the best we can by optimizing the mother's wellness, optimizing the father's wellness. But when we attend a family doing the best we can, there isn't anything that we can do to change the last 3 generations of their wellness and their genetics. We can't change that. We can't change the bioweapon that's been released into the world. We can't change that. We can't change the toxicity of relationships that are in play in people's lives. We can't change that. And that does impact everybody's well-being. It impacts whether or not a baby is fully robust and is going to make it. We hope so. We're doing the best we can, but we can't change it. And what this industry is saying is, oh, we save every baby. Well, they don't. Or they did everything, so therefore it was inevitable. But outside of their purview, well, then it wasn't inevitable. We don't know that. And I really wish we could, but we can't. So this is the real world.
Accepting life and death and life again, and birth. It's funny, like women, we see a lot of women obstetricians, women working on the maternity ward. And I always wonder, like, aren't you familiar with death because you bleed every month? You're shedding a piece of your body every month. Oh, but in our society, we're not honoring our moon time. We're not honoring the menses. We are shoving a tampon up there and acting like nothing's going on. And we just keep going, when we could be understanding death at a deeper level. We could be befriending the process of letting go and releasing, and honoring the power of our moon blood. We could be there, but we're not quite there yet. But
not yet. Things are changing. Culture is shifting
definitely.
rapidly. Yeah.
There's a lot more red tents popping up. And even for myself and 2 other beautiful womb guides here in Vancouver, we started facilitating womb initiation retreats in this big, beautiful this red lotus tent. And to see women and young women and elders in this space singing and dancing and praying and bleeding and crying, and it feels so innate. It feels so powerful. And we're seeing more and more of this. So with the Red Tent Mystery School, what we're doing here is offering women the space to honor their moon time, learn about birth, learn about death, learn about their emotions, be in their feminine, be in their masculine, do whatever they need to do, right? Because we're just all over the place, aren't we?
Wow, talk about healing generations.
Yeah.
That's huge.
It's powerful. It's so beautiful.
Powerful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I had a question, Billie, and I really want to go over this topic with you. There's a lot of people who are running this program of, I had to be born via cesarean, or my birth was a giant mess because the cord was around my neck and I couldn't breathe. Okay. So here, can we now officially normalize a nuchal cord and talk a little bit about the nuchal cord situation? Because pretty well every birth I've attended, the baby's come out with the cord around its body, around its shoulders, like a backpack around its neck a couple of times. And every time the baby's turned out fine. Every time the mother or the father has just moved that slippery cord over his head or her head, and the baby starts crying and everything's fine. So what's going on here? Why is the nuchal cord situation so terrible?
I thought that had been put to rest 20, 30 years ago. 40 years ago, I thought that had been put to rest. I really have no idea why it's still lingering. Minimum 30% of babies come out with a cord around the neck. I mean, what better place for it? Look at that nice little space there. Look, can't get pinched in there. It's a lovely little spot. The research we have is that a cord around a baby's neck in utero has absolutely zero association with any adverse outcome. So there is a potential that the cord can become compressed if it's across the shoulder, bone on bone. It can become compressed, and in that case, I have physiological births. One example, I'll just give you, just a little story time here. Was with a mother, I think it was her 4th, and she tended to be a lightning birther. And so I was invited to go to the birth, rushed over there, and it was proceeding at a very leisurely pace with her waves coming about every 12 to 17 minutes apart. So 18 hours later, still every, 12 to 17 minutes apart, she's in the pool having a lovely time with her husband. She has a big wave and she says, I think I'm in transition. Okay. 12 minutes later, another massive wave. She said, oh yeah, this is transition. Now I'm paying attention. She knows her sensations, and I'm paying attention. There's a reason it's 12 to 17 minutes apart. And then as the baby starts to descend, it starts to come quickly, and baby comes out, and the cord was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way around. And the baby was at the time unconscious. She had passed out because of cord compression. And then the cord was unwrapped, placental perfusion. Baby opened her eyes, looked at her mom, and was like, what? No biggie. But the wisdom of that physiological birth was that there was cord compression during contractions, and that baby had in its this wisdom. Now, I'm not going to say this happens in every birth, it doesn't, but in this one, it's just an example of the wisdom of physiology, which of course is not always wise, but in this case it was. That baby had 12 to 17 minutes of full recovery before the next instance of cord compression.
Wow.
The places where it is problematic, we're talking about inductions or augmentation. Synthetic oxytocin, ramping up, creating a contraction pattern on the CTG that is the contraction pattern that they look for, that they have decided is effective. That is 3 contractions per 10 minutes, lasting however long. And that's what they have decided is an effective contraction pattern. If this particular baby had been subject to that, it would have been a cesarean for fetal distress. But instead, this baby had perfect bounce back. And then when she was born, she was unwrapped and looked at her mom. It was all fine. So I think the greatest danger in having a cord around the neck is probably iatrogenic, because the research says around the neck in utero, it's never an issue. So 100% of the time, probably not, but that's the greatest likelihood.
This is just another prime example as to why interfering with physiological birth, there can be an issue. When we leave it alone and we allow the mother to learn about her baby, learn about her waves, be in the waves without much disturbance, there's never an issue. Or I shouldn't say never, but very unlikely that there's going to be an issue.
Less likely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then if there is, be a useful human when, if that baby had not, resuscitation, the way I teach it is Mother Billie's 3 Bs, blood, boogies, and breath. Keep the source of blood attached, so placental perfusion. And in many cases, if it had just been a matter of cord compression, placental perfusion deals with the problem, and the baby comes around and wakes up. Boogies, of course, is clearing airways, and then breath, if the baby needs breath.
And most babies are born blue, just so we know.
Yes, it is. Fetal circulation is 60% oxygenation. So at 60%, they are going to have that tinge. And then they become about 95% oxygenated within about 10 minutes or so.
It's another running story I hear is, I was born blue. It was a big ordeal.
I had to say, well, I hope so. I'd be worried if you weren't.
Okay, so knowing fetal resuscitation, this is a useful skill. What else is really useful for us as neighbors, supporting our other neighbors who are pregnant?
If the baby becomes truly stuck, it's not resolved by maternal movement, get the kid out. Why wouldn't you? Yeah. I mean, to say that, oh no, I can't do that because then I'm going to get a cease and desist. Be useful. Get the kid out. It's a simple skill. It's a simple skill anybody should have. This is not secret knowledge. It doesn't matter if the baby's head down or butt down. If they need assistance, give the kid assistance. And for the most part, it's not necessary because these babies are not induced. They're not coming down before the mother has optimal levels of relaxin that allows movement within her pelvis, that allows the head to mold. They're not coming down without optimal levels of prostaglandins and estrogens and oxytocin. And then she's not in a bed with a monitor. This mothers move. I mean, because labor requires effort, so she's moving. So the likelihood is very, very, very minimal. But then if a baby needs help, help a baby. Again, you should know how to help a baby breathe. Everybody should. That's just normal. And then if the mother's excessively bleeding, don't let her bleed. I mean, know how to stop it and then call for help if needed.
Know how to stop it. Does that mean giving her some sort of herb or some sort of magical potion?
Yeah, there are lots of herbs. There's also put your hands on the mother's uterus to put it into a contraction.
Right, just like how you would apply pressure to any wound that's bleeding.
Yeah.
So could you please define birth companion? So for the listeners who are not familiar with your amazing work, Billie, what's a birth companion?
That's an expression I created to more adequately convey the role. Another word that would be used would be a traditional birth attendant. I don't like that one. That is recognized around the world as a community apprenticeship-based midwife who operates within her culture according to the customs of her own culture. Trained through apprenticeship model. It is not the medical model. It is not trained through universities or medical schools. The WHO, that tremendous colonizer, has been on a path to eliminating all traditional birth attendants throughout the world and replacing them with medically trained midwives. So in Jamaica, it might be called the Nana. In India, it might be called the Dai. So most cultures have a history of women who know what to do at a birth. The English expression is traditional birth attendant, but that steps on toes in our anal retentive Canadian culture, where midwives think they own, the industry. Legislation is written so that when a woman becomes pregnant, the vagina belongs to them. And they're afraid that somebody might go near their territory and put their fingers near their vagina. Well, we don't do that. I've got my own, thank you very much. So a traditional birth companion could be, in a traditional culture, might be called the village midwife. And our culture, absolutely not, because we don't do that. What they do, nothing. We won't touch their M word. It is what I call more akin to the Canadian neighbor. Prior to Confederation, the all-male Canadian Medical Society went to the all-male parliamentarians of Upper Canada, which became Ontario, at the Boulevard Club, which is a yachting club. And as they're swirling their brandy, the physicians asked the parliamentarians to make midwifery illegal because they weren't making money. And they figured if they could attend a birth, then they would have a customer for life. So midwifery was made illegal in Canada, only country where it was wholesale illegal. And the physicians said they would now gain the monopoly. Well, the women didn't invite them because, one, they didn't know what they were doing, and two, they were too expensive. So, of course, there have always been midwives and hookers. I mean, since the dawn of time, we don't know which one came first. But for the most part, the Canadian just called the neighbor who had already had 4 or 5 births, common birth knowledge, common birth wisdom. Nobody was afraid of birth. They called the neighbor who had ordinary common birth skills. And these neighbors had outcomes in terms of morbidity 10 times better than the physician in a hospital, 4 times better than in mortality than a physician in a hospital. The neighbor was a good, safe option. So that's what a traditional birth companion is. And we work with families preconception to parenting. Only the thing is, we know a heck of a lot more than the neighbor used to know. We now have oodles and oodles of scientific evidence, studies. We look at their practice guidelines to find out, which one is based in good science, which one is just more cultural nonsense. And we have history, we have tradition. So we have got just a wealth of information and wisdom to draw on now.
Mm.
So it makes us, pretty reasonable options for families that want it.
And are you seeing a lot of men in your program, or is it mostly women? Or is it about 50-50? I'm
You
going to
mean
assume you're seeing more women only because
do you mean training the traditional birth companions?
that's right. Yeah.
No, it's only open to biological women
Okay.
because I can only teach what I know.
Mm.
So what I know is the experience of being a biological woman, identifying as a woman in this society, giving birth and attending to women. So I teach what I know.
Mm. That says a lot about where we're at and how the men have been supporting women in birth. They don't have a vagina. How do they know what's happening?
Well, you don't have to have given birth to help a woman in birth, but and we do talk a lot about this in the course. The course is hugely expansive and extensive. We talk about the female experience to get a better understanding of the female experience, what we're experiencing in our culture, what women have traditionally experienced, which helps to explain why we are where we are, why we're experiencing what we're experiencing, and how women have lost agency over their own female experience. And that has to do primarily with the medicalization of the female experience. Our little girls, once they reach menarche, they're put on the pill and numb them out and medicate our female experience. So this is what I know, this is what I teach, and this helps us to better understand why we are where we are and better understand the clients who choose us.
I don't know if you can hear that. My banana bread is ready to come out of the oven now.
You better go get it.
It'll be all right. Okay,
Don't
another
let it
burning
burn.
question I have for you, Mother Billie, is around, speaking of buns in the oven, an ultrasound. Okay, what is your opinion on ultrasounds? Should we be doing them? I mean, in my heart of hearts, I'm like, no, I don't want to have one.
Ultrasound is a World War II wartime technology. It is a technology of surveillance to detect the enemy. That was its purpose. Again, let's think of the roots. What is the root of this technology? To detect the enemy in water. And this wartime technology of surveillance is the technology that is used to surveil the baby inside of us. And one of the paradigms on which modern obstetrical services is predicated is that the greatest danger to the mother is the baby inside of her. So it makes sense that a wartime technology to detect the enemy would be surveilling the baby. But also, the greatest danger to the baby is the mother, her body.
Hmm.
So this surveillance throughout pregnancy is predicated on the idea that each one is the greatest danger to each other, rather than the greatest gift to each other, an interdependent blessing to each other. So this technology is not benign. We know it does have, of course, physical consequences to it. We know that. When it is used routinely, there is no improvement in outcomes. It leads to greater cesarean sections, more inductions, as well as what we know as potential physical alterations. However, when there's a problem, it's the best technology we've got for finding out what's going on. So when there's a problem, if a mother is 30 weeks, blood pouring down her legs, that's the best technology we've got to find out what's happening. And then to perhaps identify what can be done with the information gathered.
There was one baby who taught me about ultrasound and how they can really feel it when they're intrautero. I was attending a birth and we were going along just fine. And there was a moment of fear in the mother, and she really wanted to transfer. So we transferred, and we're listening to her and following her intuition. And this baby hadn't been exposed to any sort of ultrasound technology throughout the entire pregnancy. And so, of course, when we get there and we're on the ward, the staff is wanting to do a scan or listen to the tones and perform a cervical check. Anyway, so the first thing they wanted to do was listen to the tones. And this is ultrasound technology. And so the minute that the Doppler was applied to this woman's womb, the baby, you could see like its knees and its limbs, and it was just moving around like wild. And the woman goes, "Whoa. No, 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 no. No, 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 we don't need to be here. No, no, no. We're fine. We're going back home." She could feel her baby respond to this technology and how it had never been exposed to that. And obviously, it was very loud, very abrupt. And this baby in the womb, who felt like everything was going fine, aside from the fact it was going through this birthing process, the technology was too much. And the woman intuitively felt that. And she goes, "No, no, no, whoa, 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 we're going back home. We're going back home. So here we, okay, we'll follow you back out the door," and the doctor's running after us like, "You have to sign these papers. You're putting your baby in, you're at risk, and you could die. Your baby could die. There's meconium and blah, 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 blah," right? And all this stuff. And she just waddles out and she's like, "No, no, no, we're going back home. This is not where I needed to be." So that was really interesting. I'd never seen a baby move like that in the womb. So thanks to that child for showing me that it is true. The ultrasound technology is probably very loud and can cause a big disturbance, especially if they hadn't felt it at all throughout the pregnancy.
I would love to see a study done on the effects of continuous monitoring on the baby. Now, yes, we've got studies on, does it increase C-sections? Yes, it does. Does it increase, whatever. But what is it? What is the baby's experience? How babies are trapped in there with this thing coming at them over and over. And how do they move? How do they get away? What's their descent like? Do they have longer descents? Do they have shorter descents to get out? Is there more asynclitism as they're trying to get away? I would love to know.
Wow. That's a really important thought. What else do I have for Mother Billie? We're going to have you back on the show next week, Mother Billie, because this list is just not going to fit in 1 hour. So there's a lot of families that are choosing birth outside of the medical system, physiological birth. What do you think about the term free birth? How does that land for you?
Whatever women want to call it I'm content with it all. Sure. Use lots of words. Use the ones that are meaningful to you. Yes, it's all good.
And then through your training and program for women to become traditional birth companions, when would you say is the best time for them to join your program?
When they get the brain fart to do it. Get the brain fart, come on. I provide the training. What they do with it is theirs. They can use it to prepare them for their first birth, to prepare them for birthing after trauma, to equip them to provide childbirth education from an actual, scientific evidence-based point, to do prenatal consultations, to teach adolescents about their sexuality, to provide postpartum care, to attend births if they want to. I just provide the education. What they want to do with it is theirs. I don't tell them what they have to do. Someone has set up a business. Brilliant. Do it. If someone had become an advocate, Awesome. Some want to enter into a very private partnership. Word of mouth, just a few people. Terrific. Do it.
And your next intake is coming up soon. Is that correct?
It is. We start September 5th. So applications are open now. You have to join the Harrigan Hive, harriganhive.com. And the application process, that's free, by the way. I do have other paid areas, but harriganhive.com, it's free. And you can find the application process. So I did change things up for this upcoming cohort. I started a private member association called the Hive Collective. Private member associations, I think it's worthy of a little bit of explanation here. They're not new. They're centuries old. They are one of the longest running type of associations, private member associations. Private member associations are a group of people coming together to try to accomplish something that wouldn't be accomplished in the public realm. Most hospitals actually began as private member associations because they weren't funded through taxes and they weren't funded through government funding. It was a bunch of people who knew that what was needed in their community was a hospital that could care for their community. So as a private member association, they were able to accomplish in the private realm what they could not do in the public realm. And so what I have done is I created the Hive Collective so that primarily, I can't say exclusively, primarily, private member associations operate under a great umbrella of benevolence. Benevolent to their community, benevolent to each other. There is an absolute commitment to each other to do no harm. A profound, deep commitment. We will do no harm to each other. So what we are trying, what I'm set this up for is so that we can accomplish in the private realm what will never be accomplished in the public realm. We will never be able to change maternity services. They are what they are. They're fine. Just leave them alone. We're not going to set up, an alternative midwifery training program. They've got theirs. They won't allow it. So what we can do in the private realm by coming together in community is serving each other and to serve our community. We can do that. So that's why it was set up that way. That means the course is offered through the private member association. So if you're accepted into the program, then you accept the agreement to be in the collective.
That's so awesome. And it's a testament to their devotion, right? How devoted are you to this work? And how much do you really believe in it? Enough to totally separate the public realm with the private realm that you're creating here, Billie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so, so grateful for you and for this conversation. And I know there's going to be many, many people that listen to this conversation and feel the same. And like I said, before we started recording, I'm totally geeking out. I'd love to have you back on.
Well, thank you. I'd be happy to come back.
Yeah, we're just learning so much from you. And you're such an inspiration for so many women and families and babies coming forward. Is there anything else you want to share before we close the conversation?
I think the greatest obstacle in helping more babies arrive safely and gently from healthy, empowered, non-traumatized mother is overcoming the programming that there is only one path to ensure everybody lives. That the one path is to submit our bodies, our sexuality, our consent, our autonomy on the altar of technocratic medicine. And if we sacrifice ourselves on the altar of technocratic medicine, we will walk home damaged, shattered, but our kid will be alive. Thank you. So it's overcoming that programming that truly you don't have to sacrifice your body and your sexuality and your autonomy. You don't have to sacrifice those. If you've been gifted with a baby growing inside your womb, you don't have to sacrifice your personhood, your well-being, your soul. You don't have to sacrifice your soul for your baby to live. That baby's going to live, and sadly, some don't. But this is the world we live in. And if your baby doesn't, you'll make it through.
So it is. Maybe so. Thank you, Mother Billie. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you. This is wonderful. Thank you.